Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Gabby and welcome. If you've never been here before, never watched any of my videos, have no idea what I do, I cover true crime cases and all the cases that I cover are a little bit older. They're all basically 20 years or older, so if that's something that you might be interested in, maybe go down below, click that subscribe button, and also make sure to turn on the post notifications to be notified every time that I upload. So we have entered the new year. Happy New Year, everyone. Like I said in my last video, the last video of 2023, December did not go as planned with my December videos, which are videos that I do in December where I cover cases of Jane and John Does, but I am going to be making up for that this month. Before I get into the Doe videos though, I wanted to start off the new year with a case that is so important to me. This case though does involve a case of a doe, so it isn't too far off from the theme of this month. This video today is sort of a second part to a case that I covered a few months back, which is the case of Finley Creek Jane Doe. In that video, I mentioned how there is a huge theory that Finley Creek Jane Doe may possibly be a missing woman named Patricia Otto. I briefly covered her case in that video, but I wanted to dedicate an entire video to it. I have been in contact with Patty's daughter Suzanne for this video. Before I get into it, I do want to mention that Suzanne had her name changed. Her old name was Dallas, and she does like to mentally separate what happened to her at a young age as what happened to Dallas, not her Suzanne. So I am going to be calling her Dallas when I refer to the events that took place before the name change, and I will be referring to her as Suzanne for everything after. Dallas and Suzanne though, they are the same person. With all of that being said, this is the unsolved disappearance of Patricia Otto. Patricia Lee was born on August 4th of 1952 in Lewiston, Idaho. She was well known in Nez Perce County, so much so that she has been referred to as a reflection of Lewiston's community spirit. Just like so many others in history, her hometown was where her life's journey began, and where it would ultimately meet its end. Patty would go on to meet a man at the age of 16 that transformed the trajectory of her life. On October 16th of 1970, she became Patricia Lee Otto when she married the man 18 years her senior, an age gap that made her loved ones become overtaken by immense concern. In 1970, Ralph was 36 years old and Patty was still a teenager. Legal, but a teenager. He had actually been married before to a woman named Joy. They had been married 13 years from 1952 to 1965. To say that Patty's marriage to Ralph was tumultuous would be an understatement though. Ralph was a man with violent tendencies, and their relationship was filled with arguments on the regular. Although they were never a couple you would consider stable, they would go on to have 2 children. They had 2 daughters, first being their daughter Natalie, and then they welcomed their daughter Dallas 2 years later. When it comes to Patty, she possessed all of the redeeming qualities to be a loving mother, and that is exactly what she was to her 2 girls. The rocky relationship, though, became too much for her to handle, and she filed for divorce from Ralph in the spring of 1976. During this time away from Ralph, Patty was involved in a romantic relationship with a man named Randy Benton. The relationship was short-lived, and Patty eventually reconciled with her husband, thinking that she could possibly save her family. This did not mean the fighting stopped. It would actually only get worse. That is until the fateful night of August 31st of that same year. On this date, which was a Tuesday, Patty attended her usual evening class at Valley Business College. After her class, she met up with her sister Alice, and then Patty made her way to her mother's home so she could pick up her daughters. Her mother had been watching Natalie and Dallas while Patty attended her class. When she arrived there, her 2 girls were sound asleep. She put them in the car and headed home around 11 p.m. Her mother remembers that that night, Patty had been wearing red pants and a white shirt. This is important information to remember. Almost immediately upon walking into their home residing at 1308 29th Street, a fight ensues between Patty and Ralph. According to Ralph during a police interview, Patty came in with their daughters and put them to bed. He stated that she made the remark, "Go to hell," due to the fact that he had been drinking. He said that he was always drinking. Then they start going back and forth. Obviously, Suzanne, who was Dallas at the time, and her sister were very small, But there are details from that night that Suzanne remembers in great detail. The youngest daughter would tell News Nation, "I was scared because I could hear upstairs there was crashing and sounds and yelling, and my sister's 5 and I was 3, and I'm curious, so I crept up the stairs. My mom and dad were having a physical and verbal fight, and my mom hit him in the face and my dad hit her back, and he put his hands around her neck, pushed her up against the wall, and drug her out of my sight." The last thing Dallas remembered when it came to her mother was seeing her father's hands around her neck and dragging her out of her sight into another room. That was the last time that she would ever see her mother. Ralph left with Patty a little bit after, and when he returned home, Patty was not with him. Patricia Otto has never been seen or heard from again. Not since that night. A night filled with events that Dallas was later told by her father was nothing but a very bad dream of hers, and that she simply made it up. He would go to great lengths to make sure she never told what she saw to authorities. However, it was documented in a police report that Patty's sister did inform them of what Dallas had said happened. Ralph, though, forbade police from questioning his daughters one-on-one. He would tell his daughters that mommy was never coming back. He would tell her family that she just left. As you can tell by the information that I just went over and what Suzanne remembers today and what she remembered back then, there's more that happened. The day after, on September 1st, Ralph took his 2 daughters to a friend's home in Lewiston, Washington, and they ate lunch there. His friend would later say that Ralph was emotional and stated that Patty had left him again. Later on that same day, Ralph asked Alice to watch the girls until Patty arrives home or is found. He went out supposedly searching for her. Now, one thing about Ralph is he was someone who was heavily dependent on alcohol. He was a heavy drinker, and after Patty went missing, he started drinking even more. Alice took notice of this when she was over their home at 2 p.m. that day. Other than his sudden urge to drink heavier than ever before, Ralph was also at his home searching for something. What was he looking for? His gun. At 6 p.m. that same day, Alice and her mother decide to make a stop by Patty and Ralph's home because they needed to pick up some more clothing for Natalie and Dallas. When they got to the home, Ralph was passed out in his bed. Next to him was the gun. Unloaded though. Alice took the gun and they left. The next day, on September 2nd, Alice and her father, Tom O'Malley, contact the Lewiston Police Department and file Patty as a missing person. Other than the local police, she also gets in contact with the Idaho State Police. As a result of the missing persons report, authorities released a BOLO, or be on the lookout, which is an instruction to law enforcement agents or the general public to watch out for a suspected criminal or criminal activity. According to one police report, Alice asked authorities what she should do with the weapon that she confiscated from Ralph. They told her to hide it and not let Ralph know she had it, that he was so drunk and continuing to drink, so he probably wouldn't even notice it was gone in the first place. Now, what would Ralph tell people though regarding what happened the night Patty vanished? Of course, everybody had their eyes on Ralph. He was the last one who saw her. He was her husband. Well, his story would change a few times. Ralph would tell Patty's sister, Alice, and later on one of the men put on the case, Sergeant Thomas Lean, that Patty went into the spare bedroom. He heard a horn honking from outside, and then Patty left. He wanted to make it seem like someone had picked her up that night. However, when it came to what he would tell his brother and sister-in-law, it was completely different. He told them that she did not leave that night, that she actually left the next morning, that she woke up, had breakfast in their camper, then left the home and never returned. Sergeant Celine would tell the Lewiston Morning Tribune, "There's no evidence of foul play, but we've checked all conceivable sources in our attempts to locate Mrs. Otto, and we've had no results. We'd like to ask anyone with any clues as to her whereabouts to call the police department." Alice and her sister, they were extremely close, and she knew that Patty would never just up and leave. The only 2 times that Patty left Ralph before, she brought her daughters with her and left in her car. This time, her daughters were left behind and the car as well. Alice informed the police that Ralph was an alcoholic and had stopped taking the medication he had been taking to help his urges with drinking. She made sure to talk to police and let them know the kind of person that Ralph was. He was violent, he was an alcoholic, there had been extreme fights between the two before, they had separated for a period of time, he was very controlling, and he was the last person who saw her. Patty's family, in their personal investigation, made sure to check local hospitals to see if possibly Patty had checked herself in somewhere. There was no record of a Patty Otto checking into any of the local hospitals since she vanished. They asked around to some of Patty's friends to see if anyone knew where she was. Still, no luck. From there, things with Ralph only got more suspicious. Lewiston Police Captain M. Dwayne Ayler was the captain overseeing Patty's case. One night, Ralph is at his usual bar, and he is telling people that he wants to get rid of Captain Ayler. One of the bartenders there told him that if he needed help, he could take care of it. The bartender was simply just joking around. However, he notified the Lewiston Police Department, and they asked him to proceed with pretending to bring a hitman into the bar. Lewiston police call in an undercover agent named Steve Watts, who worked for the Idaho State Police. Ralph Otto pays this hitman, who was really an undercover state policeman, $250 to kill Captain Ayler, and he was going to pay another $750 after the job was done. Steve Watts goes to Lewiston Police with all of the proof of the hire. As you can already probably guess, this did not end well for Ralph. On October 27th of 1976, Natalie's 5th birthday, Ralph Otto was arrested for the hired hit. He would be sentenced to 10 years in the state prison. Due to this hit put out on one of the men in charge of his wife's case, people thought this was another sign that Ralph was responsible for his wife's disappearance and possibly murder. They believed he took her life that night and disposed of her remains somewhere, but there was no physical proof. That was the downside, and still is the downside today. Now we're going to change the direction of this video a little bit and take a look at Finley Creek Jane Doe. If you want more information regarding the case of Finley Creek Jane Doe in general, I will have that video linked down below. There had actually been another Jane Doe found in the woods on July 28th of 1978 in Portland, Oregon, an area roughly 350 miles west of Lewiston. An all-points bulletin was issued by the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office on August 10th regarding this Jane Doe. 18 days later, on August 28th, Detective Tom Saline prepared to send over Patty's dental records to compare to this Jane Doe's dental records to see if this Doe was possibly Patty. The next day, the news broke of the discovery of another Jane Doe's remains, this one in the woods in Finley Creek Cow Camp. This Jane Doe would later be known as Finley Creek Jane Doe. When it comes to the story of Finley Creek Jane Doe, a pair of hunters located the skeleton of a woman on August 27th of 1978, so about 2 years after Patty went missing. The skeletal remains were located in Finley Creek in Union County, Oregon. She is guessed to be between 17 to 25 years old. She stood between 5 feet 1 inches tall and 5 feet 3 inches tall, guessed to weigh between 115 to 125 pounds. She had sandy blonde hair. The thing about her was that a tiny skeleton was found near her as well. Experts believe she may have been far along in a pregnancy at the time of her death, a death that still has an unknown cause to it. We still do not know how she died. Due to antenna cable being found near the body, it is believed to be strangulation. On August 30th of 1978, Lewiston police sent over the x-rays of Patty's to Portland to either rule her out as being the first Jane Doe or verify that she was. At this time, Lewiston was unaware of the second Doe. On September 8th of that same year, Detective Saline received a message that a Dr. Brady out of Portland, Oregon had called, and the message read, "The x-rays do not match those of the body found out of LeGrand." The thing is, though, that an all-points bulletin had not been issued for Finley Creek Jane Doe until September 13th. So people today believe that there was a slight mistake made, and Patty's daughter believes that her mother was ruled out as being the first Jane Doe, but not the second one, the one that would later be known as Finley Creek Jane Doe. She believes that there was an incorrect comparison of the x-ray. It gets a little confusing, but basically, Suzanne has a document stating that the medical examiner ruled Patty out as being the Finley Creek Jane Doe. but no record that her x-ray was compared to the Portland Jane Doe, despite that being the written request from the Lewiston police. So, did the people who wrote off on it actually get the two does mixed up, and Patty was written off as Portland and not Finley? To further that theory, it does appear that the dental details for the Portland Doe were used to create the dental chart for the other doe, Finley Creek Jane Doe. Since the two were discovered close to the same time, it seems there may have been a switch-up. The Jane Doe found in the woods in Portland would later be identified as a woman named Annette Willis. Suzanne said, she is identified by the extensive dental work. She had like 11 fillings. Suzanne told Dateline that she looked at the dental records for the Finley Creek Jane Doe, which shows the exact same record as to what was on file for the Portland Jane Doe, Annette Willis. Suzanne said that is astronomically impossible to have two bodies found within a month of each other and they have the exact 11 fillings. Suzanne believes that there was a huge mix-up in this case back in the late 70s and that Finley Creek Jane Doe may in fact be her mother. If you watched my original video on this case, you would know that the bones of this Jane Doe and her possible unborn baby were sent to Coffey's funeral home, where they sat for 12 years before her case was closed in 1990, and Union County District Attorney Russ West ordered for the remains of both the woman and the baby to be cremated. Not only were they cremated, but all of the evidence having to do with the case were also destroyed. And no one from the department or anyone who worked on the case ever went to the funeral home to pick them up. So whatever happened to them is a mystery. There is a miscellaneous box of cremated remains from the funeral home, and Suzanne has had them sent off to see if there are any large bone fragments that they can extract for DNA and see if possibly her mother's remains were in the collection, better proving that her mother was Finley Creek Jane Doe. Unfortunately, they were unable to extract DNA from this collection of unclaimed ashes that sat at the funeral home. The story of Finley Creek Jane Doe originally came to Suzanne's attention after she was scrolling on Facebook and saw the reconstruction photo of the Jane Doe and couldn't help but think that the photo looked a lot like her and also her mother back then when she went missing in 1976. She teamed up with Mel Jeterberg, who is one of the main women working on the Jane Doe's case today. I've spoken to Mel myself, and she is a woman who has put in so much work when it comes to the cases that she is passionate about. One bit of comparison between Patty Otto and Finley Creek Jane Doe that we do have to look at is the teeth. If you compare a photo of Finley Creek Jane Doe's teeth compared to Patty Otto's, you can definitely tell how similar they are, even though some dental experts have claimed that they don't match up. There is also the fact that Finley Creek Jane Doe was found wearing red pants and a white top, which is what Patty was last reported wearing on August 31st, 1976. However, these two items have since been destroyed. There were also no photos taken of the clothing that Finley Creek Jane Doe was found in, so there was no way for anyone who last saw Patty that day to look at the photos and say for certain those were the clothes that Patty was wearing when they last saw her. You might be wondering, because Finley Creek Jane Doe had been found with a tinier skeleton and it was believed that she was pregnant, was Patty Otto pregnant? Suzanne was quoted saying, "If Finley Creek Jane Doe is my mother, I believe she disclosed her pregnancy to my dad that night, and I don't think that conversation went well." No one close to Patty ever stated that she revealed to them she was pregnant, but we do know that she made visits to doctors, hospitals, and pharmacies prior to her disappearance. Was it for a pregnancy though? They have never been able to find the proof for that. Ralph was an abusive man though, so you can only imagine if she had been pregnant by another man, how he would have responded to that. Whatever happened to Ralph Otto though? Well, he was released for the charge of hiring a hitman to kill a police captain after serving only 4 years behind bars. His conviction was overturned by the Supreme Court in the year of 1981 because Idaho didn't have a law on the books stating that hiring someone to kill someone was equivalent to attempted murder. The laws have since changed though in Idaho. 2 years after that, on September 8th of 1983, Ralph was arrested for another unrelated charge, this time a theft charge. He was arrested at 3 in the morning and his death would be logged at 5:30 in the morning. The death certificate stated he died due to cardiac arrest. He was 48 years old at the time. From there, Dallas and Natalie continued to live with their aunt and uncle on their father's side. After Ralph died in 1983, Dallas and Natalie were adopted by Ralph's sister, and Dallas went on to want nothing to do with the Otto family, and she made the decision to change her legal name to Suzanne. It was when the sisters were 18 and 20 that's when they decided to try to get to the bottom of their mother's case themselves. Suzanne told Union Bulletin, "I grew up being told my mother walked away from my sister and I that night, even though I reported a physical altercation and knew my father was responsible." She went on to say, "I was only 3, and I believed the lies until I saw my own image in an unidentified person poster from Oregon. Now I know what I witnessed that night was my father in a rage, strangling my beautiful mother. I want Lewiston and my family to hear the truth. I am no longer a naive 3-year-old child who can be manipulated." Growing up, Suzanne's aunt, Marcy, her father's sister, never believed him to be responsible, but Suzanne and her sister Natalie started questioning their father's story. Suzanne has had one family tragedy after another. We know that her mother disappeared and her father may have been responsible for it and died behind bars for a separate crime, but her sister Natalie passed away in 2006 from carbon monoxide poisoning while taking a boating trip with her husband and son. 4 people on that boat died that day. Then, Suzanne's 17-year-old son also took his life in 2013. She has been through hell. She has been through some of the most unimaginable pain that one can go through emotionally, and she still keeps trying. If her mother really is Finley Creek Jane Doe, she wants to find that out. Patricia Lee Otto was 24 years old at the time of her disappearance. If she were alive today, she would be 71 years old. She was last seen wearing a white top and red slacks. She was 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighed roughly 140 pounds. She had blonde hair and hazel eyes. She had a scar on her back. She disappeared the night of August 31st, 1976, going into the early morning of September 1st, 1976, from Lewiston, Idaho. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Patricia Lee Otto, you are urged to contact the Lewiston Police Department at 208-746-0171. If you want to keep up with this case in the future, make sure to follow the Facebook page ran by Suzanne called Patty's Voice. I will have it linked in the description of this video. Suzanne has been keeping up with the times and uploading videos on TikTok. She told Dateline in a recent article, "My thought is there is an expert that's out there, like a forensic odontologist, who can use the autopsy photos and my mom's x-rays and look at the teeth and say, this is a no DNA case and this is also a no-brainer case." Suzanne also told Dateline that some of Finley Creek Jane Doe's skeleton has never been located, and she is still hoping to locate some of those bones in the forest to use for DNA testing to see if they possibly belong to her mother. Suzanne just wants more than anything to solve this mystery that has consumed her. She has missed so many years with her mother. She missed her whole life basically with her mom. The last bit of information I wanted to include before I end this video is a Facebook post Suzanne posted recently where she says, "I have been working with an investigative journalist and we were discussing why my father wanted to kill Captain Ayler of the Lewiston Police Department when Ayler was not the lead detective. He never told me why. I can only speculate. Dad went down to the Lewiston Police Department on September 14th, just 2 weeks after my mother vanished. He was looking for Detective Tom Saline, but Tom was out. During that unexpected conversation, my father made several incriminating and interesting statements. It is my opinion that once my father had time to think about what he said, and he knew that none of these statements were going to help him, he wanted to eliminate Captain Ayler as a threat to his freedom." Some of the quotes by her father include, "If you think I done it, then charge me with murder and prove it. I'm a violent person. I'm a very violent person. I get all worked up over certain things. Don't bother me to knock the piss out of a woman. Like I said, I'm a violent person. And first wife, I knocked her out across the bedroom, blocked her out." A gentleman would not make any of these statements. A smart man like Captain Ayler took notes as Dad rambled away under the influence of Valium. Loose lips, as my father would say. Only a month later, my father was arrested when he hired an undercover cop to kill Captain Ayler, while Dad used a trip to Disneyland with me and my sister as his alibi. We never made it to Disneyland. I have never planned a trip since that day either. Before we end the video though, we do have some words from Patty's daughter.
Hi Gabby, this is Suzanne Timms, daughter of missing person Patricia Otto, and I just want to say thank you so much for your advocacy, not just for my mother's case, but for all the missing person cases that you cover. And I wanted to ask for a call to action from your followers. You may not be able to contribute money and you may not be an expert, but you may be able to just hit share on a post and get that information in front of the one person that can help a family bring their missing loved one home. So although funds contributed can help with the research, with DNA costs, with advertising, all those research that cost money, that's great and wonderful. It doesn't have to be your money. It can be your time, your effort, and just sharing can bring those cases to closure. So thank you to each and every one of you who does just that. And thanks again, Gabby, for all your help.
Thank you, Suzanne, so much for helping me with this video, and I hope more than anything that something can come of all of this work that you have put into trying to solve your mother's case, and your mother's case deserves to be solved. Thank you all for taking a little bit of time out of your day to hear about Patty's case. It is one that ever since I came across it while I was researching the Finley Creek Jane Doe case, it has just been very heavy on my heart. I will have all of the social media accounts and sources of mine linked down below in the description of this video if you all want to possibly check that out. With all of that being said, I hope you all are having an amazing start to the new year. Stay safe as always, and I will see you in the next one.